Loan officer sales training with the mortgage calculator. Today we're going to be talking about overcoming rejection. We'll wait a couple of minutes here though to go live on all the different platforms. Thank you everybody for tuning in nice and early. I'll put the chat up on the screen here. I see some comments were already coming in the chat. Feel free to drop comments there as you tune in. And also you can drop any questions you have there as well. But we'll wait just a moment here to go live on all the different platforms. Thank you everybody for tuning in from all the different platforms: YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, Spotify, Apple Music, and everywhere that you can find this training. Hope everybody's been having a great week so far. Good topic to go through here today. We'll get started in just a moment. All right, thank you for the comments there coming in. All right. I'll go ahead and take the chat off the screen for now, but again, as you tune in, go ahead and keep dropping comments there in the chat, and you can drop questions there as well if you have any as we go through here today. So welcome everyone. My name is Kyle Hershey. I am the COO of the Mortgage Calculator, and this is the Loan Officer Sales Training. We do this 12 p.m. Eastern every single weekday, where we go through the more front end of the mortgage sales process. So today we're going to be talking about overcoming rejection. Now, nothing I talk about, well, for the most part, the things I talk about on these trainings, they're really stuff that we all know already, right? But sometimes we just kind of need to be reminded of it. This is not rocket science here. I'm not some kind of all-knowing expert, but we'll go through some of the things that have helped me deal with rejection as far as on phone calls and doing, sales calls and things like that. And then also, what tends to help everybody, right? And what we all kind of know already. So to go through the list here, I have a slide. I got some stuff here to talk about. And the first part of overcoming rejection is who cares? That's what we have to let go of, right? Who cares? Now, most of the time when we're talking about overcoming rejection when it comes to sales, we're usually talking about phone calls, right? It's usually somebody on the phone rejecting us, rejecting what we're trying to talk to them about, or just rejecting even speaking to us in general, especially we're talking about cold calls or things like that. So a lot of what we're going to be talking about today have to do with things like that, right? Calling a lead that maybe didn't want to talk on the phone, even if they were opted in lead, they may not want to talk on the phone. They may tell you it wasn't even them, things like that. But also cold calls as well, right? Those are the times we typically are getting rejected a lot more in sales when it comes to just rejection, right? So last week we had a training on overcoming objections, which is something we can work with, right? But today we're talking about overcoming actual rejection. And in that case, it usually comes in those forms. Now, that first bullet point, who cares? Don't take it personally, right? This is something that you have to get in the right state of mind for. Some people may never get there in their lives where they could say, you know what, who cares? I really don't care, right? Some people are just going to reject you, but the second bullet point here is very important. The people who reject you, you're typically never going to speak to them again, right? And not out of spite. I'm not saying that you would not speak to them again. I'm just saying when we get rejected and people just say absolutely no, that typically means that we're not going to be contacting them again, right? If they say, stop calling me, stop contacting me, those are all forms of rejection. And in that case, we're never going to speak to them again. We're never going to run into them when we're out at dinner with our family. We're never going to be texting with them. We're never going to be, doing anything of the sort. So who cares? We don't know them necessarily, and we're not going to speak to them again. So who cares? So when you go into your calls or your follow-ups or whatever it is you're doing, you got to have that mind state already of, if they say that they don't want to speak to me again, hey, that's okay, right? I'm not going to speak to them again. So who really cares what they had just said, right? So that's kind of the biggest mind state to get over overcoming the rejection, because what I'm really driving the point home here of that for is because most people are hesitant to even get started because of this fear of rejection. Most people are hesitant to start their follow-up calls, hesitant to start their initial sales calls, their cold calls, and this is what's freezing them up, is that fear of rejection. So we just have to get through that and just say, who cares? It's not about me. You're not calling them, telling them, selling them yourself, right? They're not, when they're rejecting you or your product or your service, they're not rejecting you as a person, right? So who cares? They're just not ready right now, or they just actually didn't fill out the form. Maybe somebody filled out the form with somebody else's number. Maybe you're doing a cold call and the person just doesn't want to talk on the phone. Maybe you're doing a cold call and the person says, I'll never have a mortgage in my life. I hate mortgages. Click. That has nothing to do with you, right? It only has to do with mortgages. So first thing, who cares? Don't take it personally. The people who really reject you when there's really that negative energy, then you're never going to speak to them again anyway. So we just have to move on, right? And I'm going to actually skip one here. And by move on, I mean work with the law of averages and focused on the next opportunity, right? You can't linger on the negative in the rejection. So we have a whole sales training on the law of averages, right? But one of the great clips that I like from the, pertaining to the law of averages is a speaker named Jim Rohn, who I love. And he is talking about the fact that there's always going to be a ratio that appears 1 out of 10 or 1 out of 100, whatever it is. If you do enough calls, you'll start to see a ratio appear. And that's something that's powerful to you, because what it does is it enables you to deal with rejection better, because you know that you just have to call the 100 to get one. So when somebody is rejecting you, you say, you know what, that's okay. They're just one of the 99, right? And that's what Jim Rohn talks about. Says, I know I got to talk to 100 people to get one. I'd be happy if you were just one of the 99, right? If you let me have a second of your time and talk to you, I'd be happy if you're just one of the 99 that doesn't do it. But I know I got to call 100 to get one, right? So the law of averages is a way to help you focus on that next opportunity by saying, you know what, it doesn't matter. There's going to be 10 people in every 100 that reject me. That's great. I just got to that one. That means there's only 9 more to go, right? We got to have that positive outlook on, there will always be this ratio that appears of calling 100 people, 10 of them reject you, 10 of them might be somewhat interested. The other, 80 people might not even answer, right? And one of those people you might actually be able to quote, or, to do whatever is your conversion at the time, right? So, if you talk to 100, you're going to have 10 people reject you. You're going to have 10 people be receptive, and they're going to be your warm leads. And you're going to have one person that's actually going, and you can just keep repeating that. And the reason that I have this listed here on this training of overcoming rejection is because it helps, right? It puts it all into perspective of just knowing, hey, I'm going to call my 100 people today and I'm going to get 10 rejections. That's okay. When somebody rejects you, not to them, but in your mind, you're just saying, thank you for being one of the 10. Got that one over with. Now there's just 9 more. Now there's just 8 more, right? And so we need to make sure that we keep that in mind and look at it in that context. And on the same token, more rejection is going to equal more business. That's exactly what I'm talking about, right? If 10 people are going to reject you for every 100 that you call, the more people you call, the more rejections you're going to get. The more rejections you get, that means you called more people, and you're going to get more of those 10 people or the 1 people that actually do it, right? So more rejection always equals more business. There's just no way around it. A lot of loan officers, don't understand, I think, how much we are in sales in the mortgage business, right? As a mortgage loan originator. Now, you may be very referral based, and that's great. That's kind of the goal, right? Is to always get to the point where if you have so many referrals coming in, you don't even need to be dialing out or generating new business. But not many loan officers are in that position, right? We're essentially all sales people. So we need to understand that we're going to have rejection. There's just no way around it. We're going to have to make cold calls. We're going to have to call leads that may say that they didn't submit anything. And we're going to have to say, wait, they totally did. I see right here that they submitted and opted in to be contacted. And why did they say that they didn't? Who knows? You could wonder your whole life why they filled out a form and then said they didn't, right? But we can't spend our time on that. We're moving right on to the next call, right? We have to focus on that law of averages, the next call. Okay, this person did fill out the contact form, but when you called them, they rejected you and said, no, I didn't. I didn't. Okay, that's fine. Right? We're going to move right on to the next opportunity, but it's going to happen. You're not going to close deals without rejection. So just get used to it, get happy about it. And the thing that really helped me the most personally was that context of the law of averages, right? It was that context of saying, okay, that's no problem. That was just the person who said no. There's going to be 10 more of these. There's going to be 20 more of these. And it gets you in a happy mood, right? It's all about mindset of, oh, cool, no problem. A lot of people dread it. They dread doing it because of those. When if you look at it the other way, you can be happy that they did it. Oh, got that rejection out of the way. There's only going to be about 9 more of those. Of course, it's not exact, but you get my point here. So you can kind of flip it from being discouraged to do the calls to being because of rejections, to being encouraged to do the calls because you want to get to the rejections, because the rejections equal more business. And by now you've understood that you're not taking it personally. You're probably never going to ever cross paths with the person again who does reject you. So you don't really care and you're not going to fear any calls. So that's the last bullet point here is fear no calls. That's really what we're talking about. People aren't usually rejecting you to your face in this business, especially since we're mostly remote now for everything, right? And so we're talking about calls for the most part, and we should have no calls that we ever fear, even if they're cold calls, right? It's just something that we got to do. Rejection is something that we're going to go through. It's something we're going to have to deal with. So let's turn it into a positive instead of a negative. When we look at it from a positive standpoint of the more people I get to say no, the more money I'm going to make, because the more you get to say no, the more you will get to say yes. It's just a fact. Look at Michael commenting in the comments right now. Facts. Exactly. It's just a fact. It's just the way that it works. You can ask why it works that way. I don't know. I didn't set this whole deal up, right? When you have your own planet, you can set it up however you want. But on this planet, this is how sales work. Mortgage business is the sales business. We are all mortgage loan originators, but also mortgage salespeople, essentially. And there's just no way around it. So what do we want to do? Let go. Who cares? I want all of you to hit the phones today. I want all of you to, even if there's leads in the dialer right now, for those of you at the mortgage calculator, if there's leads in the dialer that are opted in leads, I would challenge you today to not call those leads first. I would challenge you to call a cold call list first and just put it into perspective from what we talked about. I would love for this training to be what made you say, you know what, that's true. I don't even care anymore. And it will open up a ton of possibilities to you. All kinds of call lists and ways to get leads and ways of doing business will open up to you when you just get over that who cares, right? You don't know these people personally for the most part, right? There's exceptions to this, but I'm really talking about calling lists here, dialing people, drumming up new business, new prospects, and you're really never going to cross their path again. So why do you care if they say, I'm busy and hang up, or don't call me and hang up, right? Why? Why care about it? You're just going to move right on to the next one. The only reason you should care about it is because it's getting you closer to your yes. All of those no's are going to get you closer to your yes. And now I want to go back real quick before we wrap it up to the point that I skipped over earlier, which is turning rejections into follow-ups. So when we can, we want to turn rejections into follow-ups, right? We want to flip them when we can. But if we can't, then it just bounces right off of us, right? Like we just talked about earlier. But if somebody says, "Oh, I'm not interested right now," or "No, I have no use for this," or whatever the case may be, we always want to give it an effort. We're not just going to roll over and hang up the phone and go, "Oh, cool, I don't care about you anyways," right? No, we're going to be polite always, no matter what they say. But we're also going to say, "Well, would you mind if I followed up with you in a couple of months to see if your situation has changed," right? If we're professional, we keep a professional tone, and we essentially give them an out, right? You're offering them an out to say, okay, fine, that'd be fine. I'm telling you right now, most people say okay. Even people, "Oh, I'm not ready," or "I don't have good credit," or "I'm never getting a mortgage," or all kinds of things that people say. When you reply to them in a nice, professional, calm manner, that you would like to follow up with them at a later date, maybe keeping the email over time, whatever the case may be. A lot of the times, especially when people are trying to get off the phone, they'll just say, yeah, sure, whatever. All right, fine, whatever, and that's great. Now you just kept somebody in play. We talked about yesterday that a lead is forever. I believe that was a Friday, right? A lead is forever. And what I talked about on that training was that every single lead that you're talking to that's in play is essentially an asset to you, and you're building up your asset base. Well, when you turn a rejection into a follow-up of some type, just like we talked about, you are still adding to your assets, right? You took that rejection from being somebody that's like, okay, they said to never call them again, I'm going to unsubscribe their phone number, into somebody that you can at least add to your assets, right? They might not be the best lead in the world, but you're going to set a follow-up for them, take notes of what you talked about, maybe take in the notes, hey, they didn't, they were trying to reject me, but I went ahead and, kind of saved it to follow up with. So that way, a little bit more when you're following up of, hey, this person wasn't super interested, but they just let me go ahead and save the day by saying, sure, you can follow up at a later time. So that's what I mean by turn rejections into follow-ups. But if we cannot do that for any reason, and a rejection is just exactly what it is, a rejection, that's okay. We don't care. We're not going to take it personally. We're not going to talk to that person or meet them or go to dinner with them, right? We're going to focus on the next opportunity. We're going to know the law of averages, know that we got to get more rejections in order to get more business. And that's going to allow us to fear no calls and get out there and get the calls done. So I encourage everybody today to call a cold call list with all of this in mind and build up your armor. We talked about that as well on the fear of making calls training that we had, very similar. Is the more calls you do, the more cold calls you do, the more you're going to build up your armor. And what I mean by building up your armor is putting this into play, right? This is putting this into action, is going to build up your armor to where you're not going to take it personally, and you're not going to care, and you're just going to do whatever it takes to get to those amount of calls that equal a sale, and just keep repeating that over and over. All right, wanted to keep it pretty short today. That's my challenge to everybody. I hope everybody goes and makes some calls. Thank you for tuning in. Remember, 12 p.m. Eastern time, every single weekday, we do this training where we go through the sales end. So we'll be back tomorrow with a new topic. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. See you tomorrow, 12 p.m. Eastern, for the next episode of the Loan Officer Sales Training.